Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, Assalamualaikum and good afternoon. Thank you all for finding time and visiting today's IAS sharing session webinar. My name is Adibi and I am a PhD coordinator at the Institute for Advanced Studies or IAS. Our topic today is how to survive your Viva Voce or your oral exam. And the speaker is Professor Dr. Zulkarnain Muhammad, and he joined University Malaya as an academician in 1993. He is currently the Dean of the IAS since 2018. Dr. Zul received his PhD in molecular biology and genetics from University of Aberdeen. His areas of expertise are in gene cloning, genomic, human molecular genetics, and genome analysis. Prof. Dr. Zul has published widely and is the author of more than 70 journal articles and book chapters that have been cited more than 400 times on Web of Science. Okay, without further ado, I would like to invite Prof. Dr. Zul to give his presentation. Over to you, Prof. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Adibi, for the very kind introduction. Assalamualaikum and good afternoon, everybody. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be sharing with you on the title of How to Survive a VIVA. I'm Prof. Zul, I'm the Dean, as mentioned. I'm also a PhD VIVA survivor. and being the Dean, and also I've been the Dean of IAS, I've been the Director for Sports Center, I've been head of department, so we get to be invited to a lot of VIVA. I've chaired a lot of VIVA. I think I can safely say, close to 100 different VIVAs. So I hope to be able to share with you some of the experiences, some of the good practices and bad practices, so that you'll have a good time. You'll enjoy your VIVA. Okay. So every now and then I'll be if I'm explaining to you, I'll be looking left and right because I've got two monitors here, so I'm not ignoring you. Okay, let's get on with it. So if I can get my slide to move, yes, all right. Okay, so what is a VIVA? I'm assuming, well, most of the attendees are future VIVA attendees. So VIVA is basically an oral examination. Does it matter? It depends. It depends on which university you're coming from, because in some places, in China, for example, they have 3 different examinations, and one of them is called VIVA, sometimes it's called VIVA, Viva Voce, Viva Voce. There are many different pronunciations depending on where you're coming from. I will just call it VIVA. And it very much depends on which university you're coming from. In the UK, yes, we have a VIVA as well. In the US, it's called defense. And whether or not it is a requirement also depends on which university you're studying at. In University of Malaya, the VIVA is part of the examination. Part of the examination for the award of the degree. So the decision to award you a doctorate depends on both your thesis and your VIVA. So if you think VIVA is just a formality, no, it's not. You need to retune what you understood and focus more seriously on the VIVA. All right. Moving on. Okay. So why do we have VIVA? Because there were of course there are arguments there. I mean, the thesis is enough to evaluate, but not necessarily, because what you read is sometimes just one way. So the VIVA provides an avenue for discussion, right? Discussion. It's not an attack. It's not the student gets a grilling and so on. No, it's not that. It's a discussion in which you discuss your work with experts in the field, and these are the external examiners and also internal examiners. The VIVA is also for clarification. When I examine thesis, there are sometimes just written words do not get through exactly as you want it to be. So, you know, you have some questions, and then a Viva gives the opportunity for the examiner to get clarification. And then the other thing that's important for a Viva is that it is, now this is quite subjective, but for me, personally, I use that Viva to assess you, the students, the candidates. Because we want to see you are worthy of the title doctor. You know, you are going to be awarded a degree, a PhD. You're going to be a scholar. You're going to be a researcher. So I want that avenue to be able to confirm that, you know, the candidate is totally deserving of it. Okay, so how to prepare for a Viva? Okay, if you ask me, all right, preparing for a Viva doesn't have to wait until after you have submitted your thesis, because that's what normally people do. You know, you focus on your work, write your thesis, and then you start preparing for Viva. But if you ask me, preparing for a Viva doesn't have to wait until after you have submitted your thesis. It can actually begin as soon as you start writing your thesis. Right? It can actually begin as soon as you start writing your thesis. Right? Who says this? If you're paying attention, I did. You know, I just said this. You know, why I say so? Because most of the time, all right, if your thesis is written well, if you put a lot of effort in the language, in the editing, in the presentation of results, and then discussion, if all of these are done well, then the examiners will come to the Viva in a very positive and happy manner. And the questions is more focused towards a discussion and you know, and to see, to gauge your understanding, to test your limits, and so it becomes a pleasant one. But if you don't, if you cut corners, if you don't check your Viva properly, even for the language, even, you know, if you don't present your work, you say it's table 2.5 and then 2.5 is not there. You say in page 67, you go to page 67. It's not, all these are really a bad sign that you're gonna get a very tough Viva. So preparation for a Viva, believe me, really begins when you do your thesis. Do it properly, do it nicely, and you'll have a very enjoyable Viva. All right? Because some candidates say that, you know, or they are being grilled, they are being questioned, and so on. If you think about it, where does the question come from? The questions really come from the thesis. You know, the examiners only have your thesis, and if you don't understand, there's a lot of things that there's so many mistakes, and then, you know, the examiners are bound to ask a lot of questions. So you can eliminate that issue, you can eliminate the problem by taking care of your thesis right from day one. Put that extra effort to make sure that your thesis is the best form that it can be. All right? Pay attention to that. All right? Okay, now. So moving on. I'm going to divide this presentation, this talk, to 3 different categories. One is focusing on your presentation, right? Again, this depends. There's no hard and fast rule to say that you must have a presentation. You are required to make a presentation, but it doesn't have to be a PowerPoint. It can be something else. You can bring your samples if you want. So that's talking about your presentation. The other one then will be what sort of preparation you should make before the Viva, and then finally the Viva itself. Okay? So, right. Okay, when I was asked to give this talk, the first thing I did was Google the internet, all right? And lo and behold, there's tons and tons and tons of references, YouTube videos, articles, texts on advice. So you don't actually need to listen to what I have to say. It's already there. This is more kind of a personal avenue, but you can really get quite good advice from the internet. For example, there's a Guardian says how to survive PhD 17 top tips. how to unpack a Viva, unpacking the Viva, this one, how to survive a Viva, a practical. This is even a book. It's actually from a Malaysian, Shahizan Hasnan. Wrote sort of a practical guide. To be honest, I haven't actually looked at that book, but yes, it's available. How to survive your Viva from, I kind of like this last one, how to survive a PhD Viva, a terrible guide no one should follow. So it's kind of a anecdote. It's kind of funny kind of thing. So it tells you things like, don't prepare, because if you don't prepare, that shows that you're very confident, that kind of thing, so you don't really want to follow that. but it's fun to read. So bottom line is, there's a lot of resources available on internet, right? You just need for you to Google it. Now, I'm just going to go again very quickly to the presentation, and by presentation, I'm talking about the PowerPoint presentation. Again, go to YouTube, and then it says, good, how to prepare good presentations, and you'll be served with lists and lists and lists of videos and resources. But these are just some of the common ones. But before you do anything, you need, when you want to prepare your presentation, you need to know what the format is, how much time. I mean, off late, when I'm talking about last year, this year, candidates seem to not really bother about the time, It's really annoying sometimes. A lot of students who just go on and on and on and on and on. I mean, you're given 15 minutes. So you need to really plan your talk. So that is mistake number one. Pay attention to your time. Pay attention to your talk. And you just don't want to be talking and talking and talking. All right? So find out what is the format, what is the length of time given. Plan your presentation. Remember this word, coherence. Remember this word, coherence. What do I mean coherence? I'll show you in the next slide. But basically, everything must tie up together, right? I'll explain it a bit. Coherence means everything must be linked. It's not about putting your entire thesis onto your slides. I know you've worked at least 3 years for it. I know you've worked at least 3, 6, sometimes 8, sometimes 12 semesters, and then you work so hard, you want to put, no, that's not the purpose of the presentation. Don't do that. Don't ever do that. Because, look, the examiners have already had a nightmare reading your thesis, right? Don't give them a second nightmare by giving you, a double thesis, your presentation with all your graphs and, I mean, mind you, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to apologize earlier. I'm a science-based, so I think some of the examples I've given are based on the sciences, but I think they're all generally the same, okay? So it's not about putting your entire thesis. Have you heard about 3-minute thesis? There's a competition that went on that says 3-minute thesis. What is 3-minute thesis? You try to present your entire PhD project work in 3 minutes. I mean, the explanation says, let's say you're waiting for a bus or Grab, nowadays, whatever, and there's somebody standing beside you, and you got into conversation. So in your bus or your ride is going to arrive in 3 minutes. Then he or she started asking, so what do you do? So you want to explain your thesis to a layman. Somebody who's not in the university, and then you want to tell them why is your work important. I'm not saying that you have to limit your thesis to your presentation to 3 minutes, but if you practice doing this, it gives you the experience of really focusing on your work, on the overall thought about your research progress, and really think about what are the key elements. What are you trying to solve? What are you trying to answer? And then what have you found? And then focus on the strongest points. You only have 3 minutes, and then you have to explain it in such a way that this to a stranger. So you have to really think about it. And if you do it you do it frequently enough, then you get used to thinking more quickly, thinking more concisely, and not just go on and on and on and on and on. So think about that. Again, I'm not telling you that your presentation should be in 3 minutes, no, but the idea, the focusing, the plan of to communicate your work should be based along those lines. I mentioned coherence. So what is coherence? Right from the beginning, your title, the background should describe the title. The problem statement should be addressed in the background, right? And from here, the reader should be made to understand, and from the literature review, what are the gaps, what are the problems that you are trying to solve, what is not available, and from there you identify your objectives or your hypothesis. I missed out hypothesis, but basically that with that in mind, what you want to answer, then you design your objectives, and from your objectives, to achieve your objective, you design your methods, right? Your methods, and then you gather, you want to start collecting data, you think about sampling. Again, they have to be coherent. Let me give you an example. Your title says studies of a particular disorder in Malaysia. Your sampling comes from University Malaya Hospital. That's not coherent because you said Malaysia, right? So this kind of things, sometimes you don't see, unless University of Malaya, you argue, say, oh, this is where all the samples come in, a collection center, and then actually the center comes from different regions of Malaysia, then it's fine. But coherent. If you want to see the population of nematodes, population of weedy rice, for example, and you say in Peninsula, right? But when you give your methods, you sample only at Perlis and a little bit on Terengganu at your convenience. So you can't. So that doesn't really answer. It's not coherent with the title. So you need to really think about that. If you're talking about a Malaysian population, and your sampling is, you have 100 samples of Malay, 3 Chinese and 4 Indians, that is not representative of Malaysian population, right? So remember, coherent. So everything should tie in, right? So your sampling, your analysis, how you analyze your data, how you collect your data, how you analyze them, and how you derive your conclusion from your results. And from there, you work back to look at your objectives. You look back at your questions. Are you answering? Are you achieving your objectives? I mean, you may not achieve it. It doesn't matter because this is a thought process. This is a process of research. And then you address the limitations, right? That means you are aware of the shortcomings. You don't try to say, oh, I've answered everything. There's no other possibilities. No, please don't do that. Right? Your data is limited to your sampling activity, your analysis. So what are the limitations? Focus on the application. And then what's next? Have you answered your question? Have you answered your objectives? If not, okay, what will you do differently? So all this has to be, this will be the main plan for your presentation. Not just, going through your thesis and putting every graph, every table, no, it's not that. We're not looking for that. After all, your examiners have been actually looking for your thesis. All right? So again, numerous guides are available online. How to prepare a nice presentation. Again, some common issues, don't use animations. They're nice to look at, but in a Viva, in a setting where you present, you don't really want animations or transition, because especially if you have a bad connection, then it's going to really disturb the flow of the presentation. Use clear fonts. Use serif. Fonts are divided into serif and sans serif. If you know what those are. Sans serif is the one that's got tails like Times New Roman. Now avoid that. So even these ones are not very useful, suitable. These are more for style, for presentation. But for your Viva, you want anything that's clear. For example, stick to Arial. That's quite safe. Don't go less than 20. What you can do, you see, like if you have any presentation, for example, right? Let's just say if you have this one, right? Right, I'm going to show this. Right, you want to see whether it's okay or not. You zoom out to about 40%. Zoom out, right? And if you really can't see it, then there's no point putting it there, right? I'm giving this an example of something that's not what you need to do. Okay, So you zoom out. Anything that's in the slide should be of a nice size. Okay. Use less text. Right. Don't write everything there. Don't write the whole text. And it is preferable to actually do a graphical representation. All right. Don't use many different fonts. Don't use too many colors. So these are common things. Unfortunately, as common as you may think they are, students really still do them. This is an example. Okay, I'm going to say you this is an example of a bad slide, but this is not that bad actually. Yes, this font is a bit small. It's a bit complicated, but they're worse than this. Everything, every corner of the slide is being used, with the slide, with the graph. And then if you do have to use this kind of presentation, do not go to explain every detail for that graph, top left graph, and then you say every point, at 30 degrees and 20 degrees, 50. No. Don't do that. In your presentation, what you want is to give important observations. From this whole data, what is your conclusion? You don't have that is what you need. Yes, you can show this. Okay, now you can tell the examiner, okay, I have all these slides, but basically what it means is this. That's what listeners want to hear, not to look at every data, every point of your graph. Similarly, if you have gel pictures like this, you have cell pictures, provide areas, pointers of what they should see. Then you should say things like, okay, focus on this area. You can see that, you point. You don't want them to look everything and try to read, and you don't expect them to read this. You can actually leave out all these words. As I said, these are examples of a bad presentation. Like for example, this one, there are two different cells, two different plates, cell plates here. What am I talking about? One is actually, there's a high arrow and low arrow. So you're talking about the red cells. So if you want to show that, make it bigger, right? So make it on its own slide, things like that. Do not try to put everything in your slide, and focus on the important points. Okay, so these are just example of bad ones. All right, this is an example, and another example. Too much text. Nobody's going to read them. And what's worse is that the presenter is going to read, most rules of thumb in the past have been there. Please don't do that. You're insulting the intelligence of your examiners, and they'll just go like, So don't do that. All right. Again, it's all on the internet. You just do your homework, and then you'll be fine. Okay. Have a look at the guides and in terms of how to prepare the slides. All right. What's next? Okay. Preparing for VIVA, know your research well, remember coherence. All right. Read your thesis. Okay. This is now. I think I'm going to go into. I've finished the preparing your PowerPoint slide now. This is what you need to prepare yourself for. All right. Okay. So you need to know your subject well, in and out. All right. There's no excuse. Even though some students, some candidates come to the VIVA and said, they can't answer this. Why? Oh, I've submitted this about 8 months ago and I've forgotten. That's not an excuse. This is your field. We are going to give you a PhD, so you better know what you're talking about. So know your research well. Do your studies. Do your homework. Remember coherence. Remember the story of your research. Right? Read your thesis. You may think that you wrote the thesis. I know from cover to cover. No, you don't. Read your thesis. Okay, I'm telling you again and again and again. What I'm telling you are just mistakes that the students, that candidates do during VIVA. You don't want to get into that trap. All right. So read your thesis. Know your thesis. Rehearse your presentation. Now, this may sound silly. This may sound to you that these are for for young people, not for a PhD. No, I rehearse mine, even for this presentation. Well, maybe not to the extent of rehearsing, but I do go through my slides. I do go through, and then I do plan what I'm going to say and so on. All right, rehearse it. What's best is to rehearse it out loud. It may sound silly, it may be embarrassing, but if it's not the same as you just going through your slide and you go, it's not the same. Do an actual presentation. If you want to do it alone, do it alone. If it's better to get friends and your lecturers or supervisors to help you out. But if you're embarrassed, do it alone. But do an actual presentation. Rehearse it, because this will give you an idea of how much time you're going to take. This will also let you practice the flow. This will also let you practice talking, pronunciation, and so on. Rehearsing is important. All right? I don't think many people do this. Because it's not cool to do rehearsing, but please, you'll be much uncooler if that happens. You're stuck in your Viva. All right? You need to prepare, rehearse your timing. You need to know everything you put in your slides. Don't look at the slide when you ask a question. So what is that? Then sometimes I see candidates even looking at their own slides. I'm not sure what that is. There's no excuse for that. You cannot. You must know everything you put in your slides. All right? And another thing that you need to do in the preparation for a Viva is that you need to keep yourself updated of the literature even after you've submitted. Sometimes the examination takes a long time. By right, the examination should only take about 2 months. But sometimes, we have problems with examiners. The examiners take longer time. The examiners reject the thesis sometimes. These things happen. For my own student, we sent a thesis to the examiner, and then they went quiet, and then we asked again. He says never received it. So we sent again quiet, and then says never received it again. That alone took about at least 4 months. The things happen. Sometimes inevitable. So you need to keep updated, because let's say your Viva is like 6 months down the line. If you're in a field that is very actively evolving, so you need to keep updated about the literature. Right? Keep yourself updated. Right? Again, this is preparing for the Viva. Yeah, you've done your presentation. Okay, now you want to prepare yourself for the Viva. Know your research. Remember, know your subject. Read your thesis. Rehearse your presentation. Know everything you put in your slide. Keep yourself updated in the literature. Now, again, go to the internet, go online, look for effective communication, how to present your work effectively. There's a lot of good advice out there. All right, do a bit of homework. You look out for what is effective communication. Look out for how to give a good presentation. Look about eye contact. I've had a student. Again, one candidate, and we're all sitting. This was a physical Viva, and we were all sitting, and the candidate sat down and then just looked at the screen and talked to the screen without ever once, I'm telling you, without ever once looking at the chair or the examiners. It's really, you don't want to do that. All right, you need to have eye contact. You need to have good body language, voice pitching and tone. You don't want to be like monotonous, and especially if you're going through slide after a graph after table and so on. But you just monotonous and so on. Don't do that. All right. You're talking about nowadays we do Viva online. We have speakers from all over the world. All right. So they have all different backgrounds and all different experts. So you need to be able to impress them. Model good speakers. What I mean by model good speakers, look, even when you attend conferences, or even when you hear people talk, you make judgment on who's really good at presenting, who is like not good, who's mediocre, who's very bad. Look and learn. Model the good ones. Oh, okay, this is a good presenter. What does he do? How? Because Yes, some people are given the ability to talk. Some people are natural, yeah. But you can practice. It's not something that if you are not used to talking, that it's impossible. No, you can practice to talk well. Okay. Now again, so when you know all that, do a checklist of things you need to decide. Now this is nearing your Viva. Do a checklist. What do you need on that day? Simple things like what you're going to wear. Where is the Viva? Where's the room if it is a physical Viva? Nowadays online, check your Wi-Fi. Where in your room which room are you going to use? Has it got good Wi-Fi? Is it protected from noise? It's not. Well, it just improves the Viva experience. We've had somebody who, I think somebody in India who's living in sort of a town area. So every time, whenever he talks, he sits close to the window, and we can hear the car honking and tooting, every now and then. So yeah, but if it's inevitable, fine. But these are the things, again, preparing. You can prepare, okay. You make sure you have good lighting, you make sure there's no noise, Wi-Fi is okay, you have good background, you have good equipment, right? Sometimes there was one, starting a Viva, then we cannot hear. Muting and everything was all fine, but then they realized that the earphone, the microphone that he was using, he hadn't used it for a long time. Actually, the jack was broken, So of course, to me, the chair, the examiners is fine. It's a bit annoying, but it's fine. But it's not going to be good for you, the candidate, because you are already panicking, and then these things happening is not going to be good for you. So you want to avoid it. So make sure you prepare. Okay. All right. Okay. So list out the things that you're going to need for you need your thesis. Backups. I'm talking about the time when we have to prepare slides. During my time, people don't really trust PowerPoint presentations. So some people they still want to use the 35mm slides and use the what do you call that, the carousel for presentation. They don't believe in PowerPoint. You may want to have a copy of your thesis, a copy of your presentation. If you have a handout, you need to prepare all this before you go, right? Again, make a checklist. Don't wait to the last minute and panic, right? Because at that time you don't want these things to be bothered, because you want to go attend your Viva in your best manner, in your best emotional being, your best mental alertness, right? So you want to be your best. You don't want all these distractions. So prepare early and you'll be fine. Then comes the Viva. All right? The dreaded Viva. Yes, it's nerve-wracking. It's fine. If you're nervous, it's fine. It's fine. It's good. All right? I haven't actually seen anybody who is naturally, walking and not worried at a Viva. It's fine. Yeah, it's really, really fine. But you need to be able to control yourself. So normally, whenever I hear people say, it's okay, don't worry, just be yourself. I don't really know what that means. What does it mean, be yourself? Because you are at a panic stage, you're all sweating, and then you're thinking that the day is going to end and things like that, and then somebody comes and says, it's okay, you'll be fine, just be yourself. Well, I would say calm down. All right, simple thing to do: breathe, control your breathing. All right, breathing is a very important element in controlling your nerves. All right, because when you're excited, when you're nervous, you'll tend to breathe uncontrollably, sit down, take a deep breath, right? Right? Take a deep breath, take controlled breathing, and you'll be fine. So breathe is important. Be calm. Do some mental exercise. You know how this normally sports people do this. Before they say if they have a game tomorrow, and so you want to be in the zone kind of thing. What they do is they visualize what's going to happen. Of course, visualize positive, right? Positive visualize. Don't visualize that you're going to be hammered, you're going to be very miserable. No. You want to visualize your best self. In I don't know whether you know NLP. One of the ways that you want to do this is this. You sit down, calm down, breathe, relax, and then go back into your life. Imagine that you are seeing a video of your life and look for a moment that you feel the best. It could be your childhood, it could be when you're at school where you won a competition, it could be your wedding, it could be any particular time that you feel that is your best self, right? Winning an award, for example. And if you focus on that time, right? I mean, this is an exercise you can do. Breathe in, breathe out, relax. Visualize that particular moment. Let's say for myself, maybe when I won an award as a student, right? So I visualize that at that moment where my name was called out. Visualize the moment where the spotlight was on me and everybody was clapping their hands. You ask yourself, what do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? If you can smell anything, you try and experience that, right? And try and capture it. Repeat it. And this will be your visualization of your best self. And then you can actually capture that moment, right? And then feel good about it and say, I am going to feel that way during my Viva, approaching my Viva. You can do that. It's what your brain tells you. Yeah. It's an exercise that you can do. If you're interested, you look at neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. Yeah. Because everything else is actually controlled by your brain. When you get nervous, your brain gives you a signal, you start sweating and then your heart goes pumping and so on. Those signals come from your brain. So instead of the brain controlling you, you control your brain. Relax and say, brain, think of my best self. Right, try that out, okay? Right. Do some mental exercise, visualize your best self. It's okay to be nervous. You turn it into determination. Nervousness is energy, negative energy. Turn it into positive. And say, okay, I am nervous. No, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to be very prepared and I'm going to be very relaxed. I'm going to be calm, and then I'm going to present my best self. Positive thoughts. Again, control breathing. It's important. Breathing is important. And smile. Yeah. Again, these are things that you are blocking your mind from controlling you. Instead of your mind controlling you, you control your mind. Smiling, breathing, right? Two different things, right? You can sleep smiling tonight. So visualize success, right? You visualize, you're gonna be fine presenting, and then so this is what you want. Now, what are the things you want to do? You want to know your examiner. Sometimes I don't know. I'm not very clear in terms of whether the students are allowed to know their examiners or not, because sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I think you're not allowed to know who your examiners are. But in cases where you do know them, sometimes your supervisor may slip you some information. If you know them, Well, do some research about them. Do some research about their research. It gives you an idea of what they're going to ask. You know, if you can, right? But if you don't know, it doesn't really matter, because you know the people that are going to be your examiners are experts anyway. So if you know your stuff, you should be fine. Now, coming to the Viva, you will present your work, all right, and then come the Q&A session. Understand that when examiners ask questions, there are various reasons for them. Okay, they seek clarification. You know, they're not looking for mistakes. They're not there to just, you know, grill you and ask you and, you know, try to make you feel bad. No. You know, if you ask me, no, I just want clarification. As I said, this is a discussion, right? It's not a conviction or anything, right? It's very important for you to listen and don't interrupt. All right, be polite. I mean, some students, you know, when they only listen halfway and then they say, oh yeah, you know. No, don't do that. All right, listen and let your examiners finish. Okay, and then, I don't know whether you've heard this before, listen to understand and not to respond. What? Listen to understand, not to respond or not to reply. Because some people, think about this. In conversations, right, you listen to people, and then when somebody says something, the first thing that you want to do is, okay, what's my reply? Yeah? That's not what you want to do in a Viva. You want to listen to understand first and then respond. Right? Not just listen to respond. This is by Stephen Covey. I think there's another. Right. Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. They're either speaking or preparing to speak. There's no thinking. There's no thought. They're speaking, and then people ask, and then they say, oh, this person said, and then you're immediately trying to think of reply. No, don't do that. They're filtering everything through their own paradigms. Now, this is very happens almost. This always happens. The students, when they listen, they only look at from their perspective. You have to understand that these are different people looking at your research. They have different eyes. So that's why sometimes it's helpful that if you get into the habit of discussing about your work, right, regularly with your friends, with your supervisors, present your work. Grab any opportunity to present your work so that they can ask questions. That's why it's important to do rehearsals. It's because when you rehearse your presentation, you also rehearse listening to questions. All right, listen to questions and then formulate an answer. Think. All right. This is from Emma. Learning English with Emma. It says listening and three easy steps. These are in situations, again, it's from YouTube. Situations when you don't know or you are caught off guard. You either look scared or you say, oh yeah, but you don't actually understand them, you know. Again, you're talking about people coming from different parts of the world. They may sound different. They may have different accent. Sometimes they have a different way of talking. Sometimes it's not easy to understand. So, there it says, say I don't understand, and say it says write it down, but no, you say you don't understand and ask them to repeat. So it says, show that you don't understand, and then be polite. Don't say I didn't catch that, or I'm sorry I don't understand, or and then use a strategy. Can you repeat that? Can you speak more slowly, or things like that? And then check meaning. This means that you clarify: is this what you're asking? Excuse me, if I understand your question correctly, you are trying to ask me about this. Is that right? Because you want to be, thinking the right and answering the question. Listen to understand, not just to respond. All right? Don't rush to answer questions. Listen. Let the examiner finish. Understand the question. Now, you see, for example, you have to also understand examiners are also human, right? And they are sometimes nervous too.
Why? Because they are among other peers. They don't want to be judged. You know, he's a professor, and there's another professor. Though there's another professor. He wants to be able to ask intelligent questions. You know, so they do get nervous, and when they do get nervous, sometimes even when they ask questions, they have to formulate their sentences, and sometimes it doesn't come out very well, right? Don't think that you're the only ones, having nervous breakdown. Sometimes examiners do that also, but the only upper hand they have is that they're not being judged. Well, they're not being judged for the viva, so it's okay. So give them a chance to explain themselves. If it is not clear, ask again, right? But as long as you don't interrupt, and then clarify, all right? It's okay not to know the answer. If in the end, after asking so many times, you still don't know the answer, you may have understood the question, but you really don't know the answer. It's okay to say, I'm sorry, I cannot answer the question because what? It's out of the scope of your research, maybe. Yeah. But don't leave it there. Don't say, oh, sorry, I don't know. I didn't do that part and finish. No, please don't. What we're trying to do as examiners, we want to see your ability to engage, your ability, your thought process. So we can say, okay, this is beyond the scope, but judging from what I've read, or maybe from my little understanding, maybe it's this. Try to attempt. It's okay. It's okay to be wrong. All right. As long as, of course, you know what you're saying. At least when you say you think something is based on facts and not just something you pluck out of the wind. All right. Make an attempt to answer. Be confident, but don't be arrogant. All right. Be confident, but don't be arrogant. Be polite. Be rational. Don't be emotional. Okay. All right. Remember, accepting different thoughts, different way of thinking, different perspective, open. And just recently, I was sitting in a viva. I was a Senate representative. The examiner was a very prominent historian. I was asking questions after question after question, and so he was happy. But when we sat down and trying to decide the outcome, he says, this is what I says, verbatim, exactly what he says, because I remember. He says, the candidate is being a bit defensive. He has a mental block that he thinks I am attacking him. But what I'm merely trying to do is to widen his perspective, because otherwise he is not fulfilling the role of the scholar that he is going to be. I'm just saying, we as examiners, we want to confer, we want to acknowledge that you are one of us. So we must make sure that you're ready for this. You have to think not very narrow. You have to have a broad idea of things. You can welcome criticisms and so on. We want that, because if you can't, then you're not there yet. So this is what he said, right? Yes, the student passed. A little bit of a perspective as an examiner. If you ask me what I do, well, normally what I do is that if I'm examining, well, I've read your thesis, right? I know, and I also look at where you publish. I don't need to read your papers, because it should be the same as your thesis, or maybe an improved version. But I'm interested to see where you publish, because it matters to me. I'm talking about me as an examiner. I will look at where you publish. If you publish in a reputable journal, then I say, okay, that makes my job much, much easier. From there, I would have a reasonable idea of what kind of scientist you are, what kind of work you do, right? Now, I wrote that most examiners usually lean to the positive side when in doubt. What I'm trying to say is that examiners are actually very kind people. If you see something that's not right in the thesis, and most of the time, 99% of the time, for me even, I say, maybe I don't understand. Maybe this student is not good at explaining. We always lean to the positive side. Maybe it's me that I don't understand. Maybe I can clarify this during the Viva, right? When you're reading a thesis, right? Unless it's bad enough. So, right. So yes, don't worry, right? We are merely testing your knowledge, your thought process. We want to seek clarification. I would do that, So the first things I do is that, okay, I've done that. Okay, I'll test you with some general questions and then see how you answer. And then maybe I'll just zoom in into certain portions of your thesis where I need clarification. If I'm happy, then sometimes I just go a little bit naughty and test your limits. Test your limits as in, okay, do you know this? Do you know this? Do you know this? Or maybe you don't know this yet. What about this? And because I want to see your thought process, I want to see your maturity. This is assuming that by then I should have already decided you're okay. You're there, but I just want to see how far you can go. But if I'm not happy, then it's a different story. Like I have to make you see, what are the problems, and we don't want to go. So I'm assuming that everybody is doing well, because in one of the things that is really good, some students actually see it as a hindrance, is that before you do anything, you would have to make sure that you have published in an ISI for the sciences in ISI journal. So that alone is a mark of the fact that your research must be of a certain quality. So yeah, it's actually good, because if you don't reach that quality, then you may not be able to then you may have problems. That's why I say I look where you publish, right? If you have published in the field, so I think that's fine. I mean, one of my students, they published a thesis based on wrote the thesis based on a paper format. When the comments came from one examiner, it says, okay, I will not read chapter 2 and I will not read chapter 3. Why? Because both of these have been published. There's no point of me marking it again. Some examiners do that because that's what she did. So this is the part where I published this. Once you see a paper, then okay, that's fine, because it's already accepted by the scientific, and of course it was also published in a reputable journal also. Okay. Things that you must not do at any cost. Do not fake it. Do not think that you can outsmart your examiners. Do not pretend to know more than you do. It is so obvious, right? When you are not telling the truth. I can tell you, as experienced examiners that we are, if you're not telling the truth, it is so obvious. Okay? So don't. If you don't know, say you don't know. And, rest on the fact that, you should have done better. Okay? All right? Don't fake it. And what you don't, undermines the intelligence of the very people that is going to make your decision when they're going to confer your PhD. You don't annoy them. All right? Yeah, insulting their intelligence, please. All right. But then again, be honest to yourself. All right. Now, I think I only have one more slide because it's on the 56th minute. So I should finish by 3:30. So I'm on time. That's why I tell you, keep to time. So on the last note, I would like to end on a positive note. The failure rate is actually very, 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 very low. Okay. Right. It says in the UK, well, no, it's not. Read the whole statement. It says the PhD failure is 19.5%, 16% of which the students left their PhD program. So the actual failure is only about 30. It's only about 3.3, which is about right, because I told you I've probably attended more than 100 Vivas over the years, right, including my own students, and I've only seen like less than 5 outright fails, or you downgrade to masters. Less than 5. And normally, if you really do that bad, you'll get a resubmission. You're asked to do more work. And I've written down that failure usually is not because of the Viva. It's not because of the Viva. It's usually because of the whole PhD project that you're not probably doing something correctly. You're not adding to the body of knowledge. That's what a PhD project is, or you've done some seriously flawed analysis, seriously flawed hypothesis, and things like that. All right. So it's not just the Viva that's going to make you fail. Although I think I have one situation where it is the Viva, because the candidate wasn't prepared at all. But again, it's difficult to fail. Believe me, it's difficult to fail. All right. I hope that gives you some assurance. But you have to do your part. Okay. I think with that, thank you, and all the best.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Dr. Zul. Very insightful presentation, and I hope all the participants enjoyed this amazing presentation. Okay, now I would like to invite Prof. Zul to answer some of the questions. So I can read in the chat group from, Navarani Veja. Hi, Prof. How much weightage does the PowerPoint presentation carry in the overall evaluation? How important is the slides against the thesis?
We don't mark thesis as such that it has any particular percentage. But as I said, it's quite subjective at the moment. I don't think there's any particular percentage. But like I mentioned, if your thesis is fine, right? If your thesis is okay, I would say you're at least 70%, 80% passing already. So the 20% is your presentation and your clarification and things like that. So it's not as such that it's 50% based on your thesis. No, but we do consider your Viva, your presentation, and it's not compulsory to have a presentation like a PowerPoint. No, it's not. What's more important is actually it allows you to just give your preamble or your introduction to your talk, and then what's more important is actually the viva voce, where the examiners ask you questions. That is a very subjective, but that is the process where the examiners later on, after they're happy with your presentation, and then they will reconvene, and then they start talking about whether you deserve the PhD or not. Okay.
The next student, Dana Bala.
Thank you, Dr. Adibi. Prof.
Hi.
My question. Yes, Prof. My question is related to this. When a student, because in we go through a series of process where we go by proposal defense, candidature defense, thesis seminar, finally we go for Viva process. Say, for example, in our process before reaching to Viva, all the series, we tend to get positive comments, and we build up our thesis along the way by their comments, our examiners' comments, and all that. And when it comes to Viva, is there any chances that you may be questioned, or you may be, in plain English, you'll be screwed there?
Okay.
Over the other
Alright.
things. Thank you, bro.
Okay, if you ask me, this is the role of the supervisor, right? The supervisor is the one that guides you on the right path, right? The supervisor should be the one that actually tells you whether your questions are worth a PhD question, whether your research design, whether so that I mean this is the whole purpose of having the proposal defense, the candidature defense, and so on. Previously, during my time, much earlier, we don't have all that, and then we realized at the very end when the students submit this, and then suddenly this is wrong, that is wrong. So that's why we start having all this screening process in between. So by right, if there's any issue at all, it would have been tackled there. But having said that, I personally have encountered some issues, right? For example, as a chair, not as an examiner, as a chair, because the subject happened to be in genetics and so on. When I looked at it, I as a chair, I know that there's the research is not up to par, right? But the student was lucky because the examiners think it's fine, things like that. So it can also go the other way around. When I was a student, there was somebody in the lab who we look up to. Is like our model student in the lab. It turned out that during his viva, the method that he chose was a method that doesn't really go with the examiner. The examiner is totally against that method. So that means that the whole section was really ripped off. So it's really, that rarely happens, but it can, right? It can. So that's why I say, this is where the supervisor should play an active role in, the research should come from the supervisor. Supervisor should be able to advise you on what is good and what is bad. If you're not finding that with your supervisor, you have to just reach out to other people, go to conferences, talk to other people, and be open about your research. And this is what it's all about. Research is about convincing people, telling people what you think, and getting their feedback, and then going along the way. So hopefully you don't get into that trouble. But yeah, it can happen. But okay, if that does happen, right? You did fine, everything, but you just happen to have a supervisor that has a totally opposite opinion of things, and then they probably fail you and so on. There are grounds for protest. You can protest and say, okay, I don't agree with this decision, and then we can appoint a different examiner, right? So depending, because normally you'll have 3 examiners, right? So 3 examiners, and then we had one recently, and says one of the examiners said, no, the value of there's no value to the research kind of thing, whereas the other 2 actually said it was good. So if we try to resolve in the meeting, if we cannot resolve, then the other solution is to appoint another examiner, the arbitrator kind of thing, and see. So we will try to solve. Right? It's not you. Well, normally you will not be left to hang dry and so on. We try to help as much as we can. Okay.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you.
All right. Okay.
So, Prof, we go to the next question.
Sure.
Okay, the first one regarding the e-certificate. We haven't thought about e-certificate yet, but we can consider maybe in the future. Okay, next question from Muhammad Ikram. What to respond if we are unable to answer examiner's question on top of admitting that we don't know? Okay.
Well, it really depends on the question, as I said. If it is totally out, right, then you be honest and say, oh, sorry, I didn't do that part, and it's not beyond the question that I'm asking, right? But if you're lucky, you may have read something about it. All right, and then you may give a comment and say, but from the little that I've read, it's probably this, give an idea. So, because sometimes an examiner, they ask because they just want to know. They don't know the answer. Examiners sometimes they ask, hey, what if you do this? You may think that, it's a trap, but it's not. So sometimes they are sincerely asking you questions. And then if you don't know, and then say, oh, I'm not so sure about this because I didn't do this. I only did this. Try to give alternatives, give answers, and strength. If you say, oh, I didn't use that method, I use this method because. Why did I choose this method? That's why I say you need to know your research inside out. But at the end of the day, if you really can't answer anything, you don't want to fake it. You just say, I'm sorry, I'm totally caught off guard of this question, and I don't really know how to answer this question. Be honest. All right, and start praying. Okay.
Okay, Prof, we have another question
Sure.
from IR Narendran Rengasamy. Good afternoon, Prof. Would you say that the discussion during a VIVA session would be similar in nature to addressing comments from reviewers when
Oh,
we
yes.
submit to journals? For example, a point-by-point discussion in a structured approach through the thesis.
I missed it out. Yes, indeed. I read it somewhere. Definitely, I missed it out in my slides. When you're preparing for the questions, when you're trying, I'm sure, as I said, you have published papers, right? And then you have published papers. You get questions from the reviewers. Go back and read them again. And this will give you an idea of some of the loopholes or shortcomings of your thesis. Yes, it's exactly that process where they ask you why you do this, they ask you to justify that, and so on. So it's exactly the same process. Because again, this is an avenue where you present your work to people. These are experts, and then being experts, they want to be able to accept it based on what they know. And so it's a scientific or an academic process. Okay.
All right,
Yes.
Prof. Next question from Nabila binti Abu Bakar. Salam, Prof.
Hello, Nabila. Salam.
Out of curiosity, how usual is it for a PhD project to be demoted to a master's project in the biological field and for fast track?
Yeah, well, as I said, by right it shouldn't be, because you would have your supervisor, you would have your proposal defense, you have your candidature defense, we have all that stages, and then you have your thesis seminar. By right, it shouldn't be. But sometimes, the either the assessors they don't take you seriously and so on. But then it goes back to the role of your supervisor. Your supervisor should be the one to supervise whether you're doing the right thing, whether you're on the right path, and then whether you're asking the right questions and so on. So it's actually the job of your supervisor. How often? Not very often at all. I think one case that I saw, I can tell you that when, as I said, normally you don't get outright failure. You will get resubmission. So you're actually given a chance. So this particular candidate came up with the presentation, and then all three examiners said, no, the work that was done was not up to mark. It's not of that particular standards. You go back. You need to do this. So the examiners have already outlined what needs to be done, and then the student is required to resubmit, right? Given a chance. But the student, upon resubmission, the report that I read was that the candidate has not addressed the issues that I've raised in the first presentation. All examiners have said, there's very little done on this. So it's really the students or the candidates doing, right? As I said, it's very, very difficult to fail. The worst case, normally is for a resubmission, and you need to really do more work, there will be more analysis, you need to rewrite and so on. Yes, the examiners do guide you, and as long as you follow, right? Because the thesis is going back to them. So as long as, and normally the examiners will give you a very detailed account of what they want, what they expect. So you just follow, you do it. And then some even now, I think the examiners are even more approachable. They say, no, if you feel free to come and contact me, and I'll guide you what you need to do. And they do that. So as long as you follow, you discuss with them, and they're fine. All right. So not easy to fail, but you can. and normally it's because of the arrogance, or you just see things your way, and that's a little bit unfortunate, but it's very, very, very rare. Okay.
Okay, we still have 20 minutes max. I would encourage students to ask questions because you don't have this opportunity to ask directly to the Dean of IAS because he is very busy person. Please use this opportunity to ask question if you have any doubt or you just want advice from Prof. Because I think as a PhD student, you are the expert on your research topic. And if there's no originality of your work, you don't deserve to get a PhD, right? So VIVA is the process to determine that you are the one who did the work, and it's about communication skill, about your communication, how you're going to answer the panels and the examiner. So please use this opportunity to ask a question from Prof.
As usual, I'm giving you my email and my number, right? You need to contact me.
We have question from Yu Chao, Prof. May I ask the graduation rate for PhD students in UM?
Graduation rate?
Passing
Passing rate, you mean?
Passing rate, yeah.
I need help here. Anybody has a number? I don't have the number though. In UM,
yeah. Do we have Hazwin? I think IAS maybe. Because we can only talk about IAS, right, Prof?
Yeah. Well, in UM, well, I'm sorry, I do not have the number at hand. But I've shown you a slide. In the UK, the failure is about 20%, and of that 20%, 16%, about 17% is actually because the students quit. So if you take that out, only 3% failure. So most of the people who's in it, who perseveres, should be passing. It's not difficult to fail. That's why I say, maybe in UM is a bit tough because we have certain criteria. I think other universities are following suit as well. You need to get publications and things like that in ISI. So, but that very much depends on very beginning on how you design your research, and so if you've done everything well right from the beginning, if you get a good supervisor, if you really talk to people about your work, you should be okay, right? Yes, of course you have to put in the effort. Of course, I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm just saying that it's not easy to fail.
Okay.
All right.
I think once you hand in the thesis, that means you are ready to be examined, and you are one step past and will get your PhD.
Yes.
Now it's about your performance during the VIVA, because I think the supervisor won't let the student hand in the thesis if the thesis is not ready.
Unless, of course, the supervisor is not doing the job.
Yes.
Okay, that does happen.
Yeah, sorry. We have a question from Khalid Shah.
Sure.
What is the most outstanding VIVA you participated in? Wow. And what was outstanding about it? Was it the level of preparation, content, or something else?
Okay, immediately one comes to mind. I think what was excellent was the maturity of thought. Right, the maturity where the student and where the candidate and the examiner was actually discussing the theories and the approach, and both were knowledgeable, both were experts, and the candidate really knows her subject. It was a lady. And really understands why the approach was. I mean, she was in her preparation, she was questioning on her own every step of the way. Why am I using this method? Why am I using this sampling method? Why am I using this statistics? Why not that? You know, what is the strength? You know, so when the examiner asked her questions in terms of all this, you know, she has all the answers. And I was, you know, I was just listening, and the Viva went for a long time. I think almost 2 to 3 hours. And you know, there was serious discussion between these two, you know. So we normally don't interrupt. If I'm the chair, I don't interrupt. You know, the Viva can go on and on and on until midnight for all I care, because this is an academic process taking place. And despite a lot of arguments and you know, and the candidate was defending her work, her choices, and so on. In the end, although the examiner looked as if, you know, was trying to argue and not agreeing and so on, but finally, when we sat down to decide, the examiner actually gave her a distinction. You know, because he says, "Oh, this candidate had done extremely well. You know, like totally deserving of a PhD." Until she felt that not just a PhD, she wants to confer distinction. So again, you know, this is the bit that what I say. You know, when if I'm the examiner, I ask the general question and I ask sleek clarification, and then I start to push the limits. You know, you start asking questions. Do you know about this? And what's your opinion on this? Is your opinion on that? Because I want to see the maturity, the thought process, how you come to, how you process the data, and that is a mark that will distinguish the excellent from just the you know, the average. Okay, so I would think it's more to me the quality of a thesis is more on the discussion, right? You may not get good results, but how you discuss your results, how you derive it, and how you compare with others, how you formulate your thought, and what your conclusions are, that is more, to me, is important. Some people they tend to spend a lot of time doing the thesis, you know, having very nice graphs and things like that, you know, but suddenly write a very short discussion. No, discussion to me is very, very important. Okay.
Okay, Prof, we have question from
Sure.
Nabila Abu Bakar. Okay, so this is quite interesting question.
Mm.
Maybe I can give my opinion first
Sure,
before
sure, carry on.
Okay, do examiners look at fast track candidates differently from normal candidates? And in this day and age, is it advisable to do a fast track? So from my experience as a PhD student, I'm not a first class student during my my bachelor last time. So of course, during the first year of my studies, I felt that, oh, I can't do this because it's so difficult. I'm not clever enough. But after second year, I realized that PhD is not you are clever. It's about hard work and perseverance, and about you put your heart to do the project, and you can you will live with this research until you finish it. So it's about your marathon. Yeah. So yeah, Prof, over to you.
All right. So answering your question on whether it treats your work differently, I don't think the examiner knows whether you are a fast track student or not. You know, I don't think they. I mean, for me at least, I don't find out whether the candidate is a. I just assess, make my assessment, make my based on the thesis on what I get. All right. Whether or not the student, I'll probably know during the Viva, and so it shouldn't really matter. Why we have a fast track is because we appreciate that people develop their maturity differently. I didn't have a master's. I graduated. I didn't get first class either, but I got second upper or 2-1, and I was offered a PhD in the UK at the time. You know, so we were monitored closely in our first year, and following on from that, then you know they thought I didn't even know I was being evaluated, but they there's a system that they have in where I was in the city of Aberdeen. I was called aside by two professors that were not my supervisors, and then they were asking me this, asking me that, just like a conversation. And then I realized it's actually an interview to decide whether I can continue as a PhD or not. So because I don't think it should distinguish between a fast track or not. It's just that, or because you've got better results, so we just give you the benefit of the doubt that you can probably just jump to a PhD. Because if you ask me, the difference between honors project and a master's, there's not much difference there. Just a little bit more difficult and a bit more in depth. But when you want to jump into a PhD, so there's a bigger jump. So that's why I say, you can forego the master's and then do a fast track and then just go ahead and PhD. But the only problem is that should you decide later on that it's too heavy and so on, you don't have a master's to fall back to, so that's the downside of it. But it's a good way to get your PhD quickly.
Okay, Prof, we have question in the chat box. Okay, can you, from Muhammad Ikram, can you please elaborate more on when to defend and when not to defend against questions from examiners?
Oh, that's actually a tough question. Well, that's actually a tough question. When to decide when to defend and not. I suppose it very much depends on your own knowledge of your field, right? Because sometimes you do get into that situation where the examiner may be coming from a different school of thought from your own. This, I think, again, if you have practice sessions, right? If you are familiar with presenting your work, if you know your work is sometimes controversial to one and not the other, then you will know it is more of a personal evaluation kind of thing, right? Where you try as much as you can to gauge, is this a question just to test you, or is this a question trying to change your perception and so on? And I can tell you, this is the role of the chair. This is the role of if I chair the meeting, that will be my role. If I see certain the chair needs to ensure that the viva is going in a fair manner. Even though these two contrasting, the candidate and the examiner may have different and contrasting views, right? One is not, you cannot allow one to convert the other, one must remain as is. So that is the role of the chair of the meeting, where you want to try and balance, between these people. That's why we have three examiners, right? That's why we have three examiners. Even I don't say what are the chances that you have all three examiners against you. If you have all three examiners against you, then that means you're definitely wrong. But if you have one that's against you and then the other two, so you'll be fine. Yeah. So you try as much as you can to defend what you believe, but substance, right? Defend with substance. Defend with evidences from other papers. Defend with other known prominent researchers that have done so. Don't just defend based on what you think. Then that's asking for trouble. Okay.
Okay, we have another 5 more minutes. Can I invite my Sarah Yusuf to ask the question, because you wrote in the chat box? Maybe you want to ask directly from Prof, if you don't mind. Please unmute.
Sorry, Prof. I can. Okay.
Hi.
Can you hear me? Hi, Prof.
Yes, I can. Yeah. Hi. Yeah.
Okay.
Hello.
Sorry, I can open the camera.
No problem.
Okay, Prof. I have a question. If we have already published our paper and it's already accepted for to be published, can we confidently say that our experiment is up to the PhD standard already, and inshallah it will be passed after the Viva. That's all.
Yes, but as I said, it depends on where you publish. All right.
Okay.
If the experts will know that you are publishing in a reputable journal, or are you publishing in sometimes like this predatory journal? I'm sure you are aware of predatory journals where you can. That's what happens now. You can pay to
Yeah.
get published and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as you are publishing in a reputable journal, then
Mm-hmm.
your examiner will know that it has undergone the review process and things like that. So as I said, for one of my students, the examiner just said, no, I'm not going to examine chapter 2 and
Mm-hmm.
chapter 3 because it has been published.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
having a paper, as I said, having a paper published is really a good support to make you pass. There was one Viva recently also that we had into the situation where the examiner said, the one examiner does not think that the PhD work is worth a PhD. He says it's not novel. But when we discussed, then our argument was that he published in a fairly reputable journal. So and that means that we cannot deny that and say no, your publication is wrong and so on. So as academics, we don't do that. Other people have recognized the work, so we feel that at the end of the day, so okay, I may not agree with it, but other people have agreed with it. Other people have seen your work and feel that you have published 3 papers on it, so it must be acceptable, although it may not agree with my way of thinking. So but then as examiners, as professional examiners, we will accept your paper. We will accept your PhD.
Okay,
Okay. Thank you so much, Prof.
Right.
Thank you, Maisara. Okay, maybe we have 2 minutes. We have 2 more questions, Prof. So,
Sure.
okay, let me just read quickly from Narendran again. Prof, would you agree that having significant parts of our PhD thesis and research published in Q1 ISI index journals will bring confidence not only to the examiner but also to the candidates, as it reflects a sense of acceptance from scientific community on the work done?
There, definitely. But again, okay, you have to understand. You have to understand, even journals, even good Q1 journals, there is a journal that publishes good scientific research. There's a journal that publishes new scientific research. Both are actually Q1 and Q2s and so on. Both are highly reputable, but there are some that just as long as you produce good science, your methods are okay, then you get published. Q1, Q2 is just how frequent people cite it. So the more it gets cited, the higher the Q rating, right? But you must know where to publish in your subject specific journal, and these are the journals that this reputable journal that subject specific, and then these are the ones that they have like maybe only 30% acceptance, 70% rejection rates, and these are the journals that really look at the novelty. If you are repeating other people's work, then no, only novel. So that's why I say when I look at papers, I look at where you publish. You may be publishing in a journal that just reports that publishes scientific reports, which is fine, right? But if you're publishing in somewhere that's reputable for new, so then that's even a plus point, right? I mean, there are somewhere that I've read that classifies these journals into that kind of of course you have the non-reputable ones, the reputable ones, the highly reputable ones. There are some that just publish reports. There are others that publish new reports, right? So if you can read the description of the journal. Okay,
last question, Prof. Hi, from Angeline. Hi, Prof. May I ask if students over their graduate on time period, can they still have a chance to get distinction during VIVA?
I don't think so. Azwin? I mean, rules and regulation, I have to ask my expert, Azwin.
The maximum period is 6 semesters.
6 semesters. So in order to get distinction, you have to finish within 6 semesters. Beyond that, I'm sorry, you won't be able to get your distinction.
Okay, now it's past 4 o'clock. Okay, thank you very much again, Prof, for answering those questions.
Thank you for having me. Yes.
And for the great presentation. It was a pleasure to have you with us.
The pleasure is mine.
So this concludes the webinar. Thank you all for attending, and we hope you have learned and enjoyed the presentation. And please don't forget to fill up the survey form and submit to us. So we hope to see you again next time. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Stay safe, everyone.